Welcome to the Bariatric podcast, where we support the bariatric community with humor, humility, and honesty. I'm April.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Natalie.
And today, guys, we have the amazing opportunity to welcome Jason's amazing wife, Sarah, to the podcast. Hi, Fred. Sarah is here to share her story about self-love. And we just want to give everyone kind of a heads up. This conversation today is going to be very intimate, very deep. She's going to be sharing stories about her life, trauma, drug use, and really how she has come from a place of self-harm to a place of self-love. So this conversation is going to be a big one. And if any of those things trigger you, we would maybe recommend that you just skip this episode. But of course, if you are curious to learn about Sarah's story, absolutely, you guys reach out to her one-on-one. She is happy to share her story and her experience with you, because really, Sarah's like, you're like you're a pillar of our community. And for you to be able to say, like, I started here, I ended up here, but here's how I have navigated the middle is so powerful. And you really kind of like come into your own in our community in the past couple months.
I feel like it's the last week.
That could also be true. That could also be true. All right, Fred. So before we dive into the conversation, will you just take a couple of moments and just introduce yourself to our friends and followers that maybe don't know you as a person or as a bariatric patient?
Sure. So my name's Sarah. I am married to Jason, the Smithsonian, and the other founder of Bari Nation. Jason and I have been married for over 20 years. I'm also a mom and a grandmother. We have granddaughters that are beautiful. And I am a therapist. I'm a writer. I started this journey. I had VSG surgery in May 14th of 2021. So I'm a little bit over 8 months post-op. I did no weigh January, so I weighed today. I'm officially down 135 pounds.
Dang, girl, look at you go.
I know. So I gained, when we first started the step bed, I gained 2 pounds that week, which was, I've been really lucky that I haven't really had like a real stall or really gained. I've, pretty much, even if it was like 0.2 pounds, I've kind of lost something every week. So to see that scale go in the opposite direction was a lot for me. Luckily, I have a fabulous support system with everybody in the bariatric community. So when I post, I did a story about it, and I got so many responses like, it's because you're just now starting to work out. It's from the walking, put the scale away. It's water weight. And so I did. And so, so I lost those 2 pounds, another 3 pounds. So I think total for the month of January, I lost like 8 pounds.
And that can be huge. I mean, I know, yes. Nat and Jason, you and I, we talk about this all the time. It is so frustrating when you hit that stall, mm-hmm. and you know that you're doing everything right. And especially when you've like added movement, and then to not see the scale change or to go up is infuriating. But clearly you like stuck to the plan, you understood the assignment, you stayed the course, and everything, turned out as it should have. So, I mean, yeah, that's awesome. Awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it's, you look at my posts, a lot of my posts, people are like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I needed this. You're keeping me focused, motivated, whatever. And, I've been really honest, like, those are for me. A lot of the time, like, that's what I need to hear. And so when I get those messages or those like that feedback, I'm just like, oh, like, I'm not alone. Like, like everybody else, we kind of need all of the same thing. So when I find something and it's really helping me right now, I share it.
Mm-hmm. And that's huge. I mean, really, that's what all four of us, that's what we're really here for, right? We find things that help us. We want to pass along either that inspirational message or that like aha moment, because we know that somebody else is going to benefit from that as well. So,
and that's kind of one of the key things that I learned about the journey too, and that, you know, Sarah's also learned and picking up over this past couple of weeks, is that you kind of become an unintentional motivator. Like, you don't think about it coming into it. A lot of people, that's not their plan, their goal. Like, they just, you know, have the surgery and think that they're going to do the best they can for themselves and kind of be involved in a community. And it's not until you start sharing these things, get involved and see these people, and these people start seeing kind of what you're doing, that you realize that you are talking to more than just yourself. And the more of those conversations you have, and you realize how far your reach can go, whether you've got 50 followers or, you know, 550, it really, you know, if you can motivate, I mean, that's at least what I told myself. If I can help one person, you know, either, you know, in their journey whatsoever, I feel like I've done my part, you know, after. And then, you know, cut to now, of course, we've helped, you know, way more than just one person. And it never stops being an amazing feeling to know that you touched somebody in such a way when they needed somebody the most. Like, they were just had their hand out reaching for whoever, and you happen to be that person that could, you know, grab on and pull them where they needed to be. That just, to me, that feeling beats anything else about the post-op experience that I've had.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty powerful experience to know that what we're going through, other people are going through, and that we have the space and the ability to share it and to grow with one another. It's literally why our community is amazing. Hands down. All right, friends. Well, shall we dive in? I know this is going to be a big conversation, so I want to make sure that that Sarah, you have the floor to just tell your story and really teach us how you went from a place of, you know, not self-love to self-love. So if you guys are ready to dive in, I say let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
So for me, I would say that normally, because I'm a therapist, I'm also a person in long-term recovery, and now I'm a bariatric patient. And so I would say up until today, I've done a pretty good job of keeping those things separate. And so this is probably going to be like the first conversation or discussion where I sort of jump in and out, or like put on the different hats at time to time.
But, you know, but that's really interesting. Natalie, you and I were just talking to one of our close friends in the bariatric community about this. And right, for us to really kind of find that happy, healthy weight for the rest of our lives, we can't really separate the two, right now.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about how my analogy is my security water bottle, like my security blanket. That's my bariatric surgery. I can't really go without my water bottle because it's a part of me now. I drink water all the time. This is it, you know? Yeah, like Jason, his is worn down. I mean, that is like a part of us now, and that's kind of how the bariatric surgery in this community is. You can't really leave it, because then you'll be thirsty, then you'll be wanting more. And so I think when you are around the 1 year mark and like 1 to 2 year mark, you have to kind of stop and really evaluate if you're willing to carry this water bottle around, but you have to know that you're going to be thirsty. In other words, you have to know that you're going to be needing more from something else, and it'll likely be food, and you'll likely gain your weight back. So finding that happy medium to have it around all the time, and to have it as part of you, like a facet of you, is really important. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you to kind of see those different hats in motion, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. Right. So our working definition of self-love is regard for one's own well-being and happiness. So before surgery, Sarah, do you feel like you practice self-love for yourself? Did you have that regard for your well-being and happiness?
Absolutely not.
Not surprising, but tell us about that.
100% honest. So, but like when I was going through my process to get approved for surgery, I really realized how my self neglect, not just because we're being 100 today, how my self neglect had sort of transformed over the years. So, I'm really open that I have a history of self-harm. I thought I had stopped doing that, or like stopped practicing self-harm like in early adolescence. And so it wasn't until I became much older and I was actually in recovery from some substance use that I learned that I was using substances as a form of self-harm. So when I was 12, my older brother died really suddenly. He had an aortic aneurysm. So he was at basketball practice, told the coach that he was tired. The coach gave him a break. He went over, sat on the bench, put his head in his hands, and died. And so I came home from school. My dad was gone on a hunting trip. The school couldn't get a hold of him because he was in the woods somewhere. They called my mom. So I walked home to this like family panic. And my brother is 6 years older than me, so he was away at college. So we couldn't like go there, like that was her, she didn't believe it. And so I remember she was panicking. She told my cousin to call the dorms and like find some of his friends and find out, like they, it was just that immediate shock and denial, like they have the wrong parent. And so, it was confirmed that it was my brother, and we probably packed and left within, a matter of hours. We kind of went into like this action mode. So there was no really crying, grieving, anything that I remember happening. And all of that is really fuzzy. Like I kind of remember getting in the car, driving away. And even now, I fast forward to being at my grandmother's, and they had to like basically like send out a search party to like find my dad because he did like primitive campaign, and this was back in the late 80s. Like there was no like cell phone. You had to like send people into the woods. So they found my dad. So we got to my grandma's in Louisiana, grabbed my dad. Like the next thing I remember, we were at my uncle's in Houston. So it's very, very choppy. So for anybody that's not used, that doesn't, isn't familiar with trauma or what happens to individuals when they experience a trauma, I usually put it in terms of, if you think about a mirror or a broken mirror. So like when a person experiences a really significant trauma, it shatters that mirror. And so you have pieces of the event or like pieces of your life. And really when you're trying to deal with that or heal with that, you're trying to figure out how to take all of those pieces and put them back together. So even though I've done a lot of work in this area over the years, in therapy, there's still chunks missing of that time in my life. And I know my parents did not handle it well either. Like they did not deal with it well. Everybody just sort of disconnected and shut down. And it also, my dad had PTSD from being in the war. And so if you have a trauma and then you experience another trauma, it can reactivate it. So like he started having nightmares related to being in Vietnam, to the point where he was like fighting in his sleep. He had to start sleeping in another room because he was like literally like hitting my mom in his sleep. And it wasn't until about 6 months after my brother passed away, that we were still having all of these issues, like all of this, just not coping well. And so that's the other thing now as a therapist that I understand about trauma, is it's usually like at least like 4 to 6 weeks after the event, before a traumatic experience can become PTSD. As a then 13-year-old kid, I didn't know. I just knew I wasn't okay. And I had a cousin that was had gone to rehab for substance use. And so I kept telling my mom, like, I wanted to go to rehab, which she was the craziest thing to her. And I wasn't even using drugs at the time, but I just knew I wasn't okay. Like, I wanted somebody to help me. I didn't really know how to verbalize that. And so shortly after there was when I had started, cutting, burning, myself. And I would usually, I got a cut on my arm, just a random cut. And first it started with like skin picking. So I was like picking the scab from that cut. And then I started cutting inside that cut. So it's kind of a large, like a wide scar now. But it was mainly like I used that to hide it. And I think because my parents also were unwell because of what happened, like it never clicked to them. Like Sarah's had this same cut on her arm for over a year. Like it never, like it was just never a thing.
Well, it's so interesting too to hear your like description of trauma, because right, I think everybody in life can go back to a moment where they can identify with that shattered glass feeling. It doesn't necessarily have to be some large traumatic event, like all of a sudden losing your brother. Everybody's trauma is individual to them, and when that glass breaks, it breaks. Yeah. And right, and just to think about trying to put that mirror back together again, you're just never going to be able to do it, because you're not going to find all of the pieces. But that work of putting it together is kind of like almost, it's like continuing the trauma, because you're almost like reliving it every time that you're trying to put it back together again. Wow. Holy crap.
Yeah. And, I appreciate that you say that, because I know, like, even as a therapist and like with training other therapists to work with people that have trauma, the question comes up a lot is, well, how do we know if someone's experienced trauma? And my answer is usually because they tell you. Like, if they tell you it was traumatic, it was traumatic. And so we know that, like, especially like going through natural disasters, that people can experience the same event. One person can develop PTSD and the other person does not. And so, it's so important to recognize that if someone has an experience and it caused a trauma, that we respect and that we honor that trauma and we help that person heal from that trauma, because it's individualized to every person.
It is, right? And when we discount our own trauma, we're kind of keeping ourselves stuck in the place that we're at. So, right, and the comparison game is strong in our community. I mean, it's just strong in like the human, right, the human capacity. But if we're comparing our trauma, or if we're trying to figure out if our trauma is trauma based on what other people have been through, we're discounting our own story, because it really, it's not what we experienced, it's how we reacted to it as an individual. And if our mirror is broke, and that can indicate trauma. Absolutely.
Well, and there's now there's more research that there's a lot of things that help people build resilience, which is what helps you rebound or recover from this trauma. And so, resilience factors like, having supporting people, having people that generally care and love you regardless of, how, you're acting or how you're responding to things. And, there's a saying is like, find people that will love you until you can learn to love yourself. And that's resilience, is having those people.
And that can be hard to do when you don't have self-love for yourself. I mean, I'm looking at this definition. If you don't have a regard for your own well-being and happiness, it's going to be really hard to find somebody who is looking out for your well-being and happiness if you don't even believe it yourself.
Well, and even if you do, like, one of the hardest things for that is a lot of times those people, like, you have a hard time believing that those people, even if you find somebody that they can love, you don't think it's possible. You think that, well, you have such a low opinion of yourself. You're like, well, how could this person feel anything about me other than what I see of myself, which is not worthy of any of that. So you don't really mean it when you say you love me. You just want something from me, or you're just here because of what you think I could do for you. It's not about true you actually loving me.
Yeah, I mean, I just posted about this the other day. My past self, I really thought any love, any attention that was positive towards me was out of pity, because I was like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that someone could actually care about me and love me because of my past traumas. That was it was a trauma response to, I mean, my friends that I've known since I was 13, my mom, my family. I mean, I just never thought any of it was real. But I feel like a part of me, and I feel like maybe a lot of people can relate to this, like, a part of me knew, like, really deep down knew that it was real, but the trauma buildup and those experiences that I had really told me that it wasn't real. So I had to be around enough people who did love me, and I had to train myself, literally had to train myself to accept the things and the love from other people in order to then start loving myself. But that was a trauma response for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know part of it is like, we all have that voice, that negative voice back here that we're trying to get rid of. And so it's like, yeah, they love me right now, but it's because they don't really know me. And if they really knew all of me, then they wouldn't love me. So I can't really let them, I can't really let them know me 100%.
Yeah. If they only knew that I ate 5 McDonald's cheeseburgers last night, then they wouldn't love me.
Well, and this so hits home for me in the discussions that I've been having with a lot of people in our community recently. They're having a hard time believing that our bariatric community is as supportive and loving as it is, because they just keep saying, like, but this just can't be true. I have a really hard time believing that people really like me and accept me for who I am. Mm-hmm. But that's just going back to that the self-love and that mistrust and these previous traumas that we have experienced, all of the broken glass, so to speak, that is kind of around our feet. We're asking ourselves to step over the glass, but yet we see it, and we just can't trust that there's a different reality out there for us. Yeah. And that just keeps us in this perpetual state of almost purgatory, right? This like self-love purgatory, because we just can't seem to break out of it.
Yeah. Well, and like for me, it's transformed over the years. So I think I'm getting away from it, but it's becoming to something else. So like when I thought I stopped practicing self-harm, I had started using drugs, and it wasn't I'm going to stop this and I'm going to start this. It was, I think what started happening, I think if I remember what started happening is I think my cut got infected. And so I was having to then cut in other places. And so I have a big scar here. And so, and I had enough like wherewithal to realize that I needed to stop, not because I had learned another way to cope, but because I didn't want to get caught. So I think the other thing that's really important to know is like people that practice self-harm, it's because they are having huge emotions that they do not have another way to deal with. So, I could not deal with what had happened to my family. Like I could not emotionally deal with what was happening. My mom did lots of work stuff. My dad was an athlete, so he traveled like during spring training, things like that. Like they were just kind of like doing whatever to sort of hold that together. And so like I think they had totally disconnected from their feelings. They just kind of walled everything off and just business as usual. And so I could not deal with the emotions. And so when you self-harm, it forces your body to release dopamine. So like and dopamine is like our natural like pleasure chemical. So like anybody that's ever stubbed their toe, like, you know, it hurts. Like you're just like, oh my gosh, stub your toe, hit your funny bone on your elbow. Like it's that kind of immediate, intense pain. But then just after a few minutes, it starts going away. And so if you're very in tune with your chemicals in your body, you can literally feel like the pain relief rushing to that area of your body. And so whether it's emotional pain or physical pain, you feel that dopamine come in, and that dopamine soothes that for a period of time. And so like there's a very, like, even though I know it's very shocking to other people, like how can you hurt yourself like that? Like it served a purpose, and more than likely at the time it saved my life. Because it's, you know, I mean, there were times that I was also, you know, suicidal during that period. And then I also was extremely irrational. Like I thought because my brother died suddenly when he was 18, I was going to die suddenly when I was 18. It makes absolutely no sense why I thought that, but I thought, you know, at 13 years old, I had 5 years of my life left. So really when the substance use started, it was because I was tired of being sad and hurting all the time. And so I was walking to school one day, I saw some kids hanging out behind a dry cleaner, and everybody was getting high. They were laughing, they were joking, they were hanging out, and something happened in my brain. And I was like, I want that. That's what I want. I didn't want the drug. I wanted that feeling. I wanted the camaraderie. I wanted the happiness. And that's when my substance use started. I was like 13.
Well, and it's so interesting to hear how, again, like our brains are not, there's anything wrong with our brains. They are hardwired to keep us safe and to keep us out of harm. So when we are experiencing those things, it's going to look for something that will provide us that immediate relief. And it sounds like for you at the time, it was physical harm. And then that moved to substance abuse because it gave you that relief. But food does the exact same thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it's also, you know, when you said I was irrational and I thought I only had 5 years to live, if I saw my brother die at age 18 as a 13-year-old, I don't think my brain would be any different. To you, that is your reality. That is your timeline, you know? And so, sure, is it true? No, but it's not completely irrational because that is all your brain knew at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it did. And I lived those next 5 years. Like, what is that country song? Live like you were dying. I lived those next 5 years with very little regard for my future. I, you know, just kind of did whatever I wanted to do. And the only thing that kind of kept me reined in was my parents and my grandparents, and just kind of wanting them to be proud of things. So even like the wilder stuff that I did that kind of got me into trouble, and I experienced additional traumas just because of the company that I was keeping. I was putting myself in a lot of risk. I was putting myself in a lot of danger. I had, you know, some other experiences because of that lifestyle that I was sort of dabbling in. But the only thing that sort of kept me on a semblance of a straight and narrow was that I didn't want my grandmother to find out. what I was doing. So I had to still sort of be like the good kid, or appear to be the good kid. So I did spend a lot of time, looking the part. Like if you had seen me during this, time in my life, I looked like a little preppy girl getting ready to go to college. Like, there was nobody would have known I was, taking pills and smoking weed and drinking Everclear, outside of that. So it was sort of like this double life that I kind of led, all of the time. And
I think a lot of us can relate to that when it comes to our food journey, right? We've all led a double life when it comes to our food, like acting like, no, everything's good and I'm eating a salad and I'm going to the gym, but at the same time I'm doing X, Y, and Z with food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you addiction is addiction no matter what. Abuse, substance abuse is substance abuse, whether it's drugs, alcohol, food. There's that aspect of shame that sits in your heart that just says no one else can know. No one else can know. This is my secret. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we all have that kind of double life, like, oh yeah, I remember when I would do this, but then I'd turn around and do this. And that's addiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's been a lot of like maladaptive coping skills that I've used kind of throughout my life. So, when Jason and I met, I was 24, and he was going to school to be a cop. And, so again, I met him in like the good side of my life. And there were a couple times, like he knew, because I would let stuff slip that was just kind of, while, it was becoming so normal to me. I'd never met anyone that didn't drink, had never used drugs, never smoked a cigarette. Like he's never done anything. And so it was kind of weird because like a lot of the stuff that had been normalized, because the people that I was around, like even if they were just heavy drinkers and weren't drug users, they were at least heavy drinkers. So like driving home and not knowing how you got there was something that had kind of been normalized. That was not okay with him. And I think my friends called him, we had a talk between us, but my friends had called him to come get me out of a strip club, because I was so messed up. And then I'd locked myself in a bathroom stall. And so my friend crawled under the door to like get me out and called Jason to come get me. And it's very blurry, so I don't really remember what all happened. But I think it was the next day, he kind of had a conversation with me. And even though it was very early in us knowing each other, he knew me well enough that I was sort of she who cannot be controlled. And so he said, I really like you. I want us to continue to do this, but that stuff that you're doing makes me nervous. And so I remember having this thought, like, what are you talking about? What stuff? Who have you been talking to? Like, what do you know? Mm-hmm. Because I thought that I was hiding it really well. And so, I remember thinking and kind of like processing through that and being like, well, it's not going anywhere. Like whatever's happening out there in the world, like drugs are going to be there. Like it's not going anywhere. Kind of at the same time, I was in college and I noticed also that I was getting stupid. So I was a person that never really had to study. I was the person that could, read a book and, a couple days, take the test, make an A. Oh, you have a 10-page paper due? Yeah, I need a weekend and I can knock that out. I never really, school was not hard for me when I was younger, but I noticed like as the substance use had kind of like continued, that's the easiest way that I could say it, is I noticed I was getting dumb, like it was becoming difficult. So I had kind of cut back a little bit anyway, just because of that. So it was pretty easy to make that transition into, just like stopping all of the drugs. And so, and his biggest thing was because I'm going to be a cop and, I can't be around illegal drugs. So I don't care if you continue to drink, you can go drink with your friends. I don't care, but like the drugs need to stop, or we'll have to stop. And it was like totally up to me and like my decision. So, I was like, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then in school, like when it got, like I was taking electives, this is when I kind of figured out like how much I thought or how much I was using this to kind of like help me live life, just with emotions or whatever, anything stressful. But I took a drug abuse class in undergrad for an elective, and I was like, drugs of abuse, sure. That'll be an easy A for me. Sign me up. But in that class, they talked about this whole concept of what they call chasing the dragon. And it's actually a book, but it's basically the concept of people continue to use because that first, like no substance use is ever going to be like that first use. So the first use, that first relief, that first benefit that you get from using your substance, and that could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be food. Like that first relief that you get, you can't ever get there again. But you spend a lot of time trying to. And so, all of that just really resonated with me. And so it made sense as to why other people that were in recovery, they'll ask you like, what is your drug of choice? I didn't have one. And I always, try to be funny to not be so serious about stuff. So I always say anything and everything, and it was better when it was free. But this started making more sense to me as to why, like, the burning wasn't enough. And then it turned to the cutting, and then the cutting wasn't enough. And then it turned to the substance use. The substance use wasn't enough, and it kind of became progressive, over the years. And so when I first stopped using substances, I really had to learn to do a lot of work to deal with life. And most things that other people would find to be just a normal thing that you had to deal with was extremely hard for me. And I continued to take courses. I fell absolutely in love with sociology. And so I changed my major from business law to sociology. I decided I was going to study groups and group behavior. But something always kept pulling me back to therapy, like through school. Like, especially because there was a parallel program in my sociology program that was in substance abuse studies. So it was in the same department. And a lot of people would get into early recovery and they would come take these classes. And at this point in my career, in my, college career, recovery, whatever, I'm like 7 years off drugs at this point. So other people that were freshly off drugs. So when you're new, and it's kind of like the same thing with bariatrics, when you're new and you found this thing that has completely changed your life, you run around and you scream from the rooftops about it because it's so fabulous. And we want everybody to drink the Kool-Aid, right? And so people in early recovery, they do that, but they also tend to over disclose. Because when they're stressing about how wonderful everything is, they also tend to put out how horrible it was to get you to understand the change, to get you to understand how bad it was. So like with us, we talk about, definitely our highest weight. right? That's something that's always out there. This was my highest weight. Like for me, I weighed 391 pounds 8 months ago. So yeah, I've lost 135 pounds. I look great. I look great to people that knew me before. People that didn't know me, I probably just look normal. So I need to make sure everybody knows that I'm not normal. Like, I'm great. And this is why I'm great. And because I used to be really, really bad. And now this is better. So even though I'm not as good as you, I'm still way better than I used to be. And that sort of happens across recovery. And so I had an understanding of that. So I kept getting pulled back into this counseling track of programming. And so I decided that, the laws were getting ready to change in Oklahoma. I was at a time where I could go ahead and do this. And then I'll be able to get licensed. And so with like a general counseling master's. So now today, if somebody went to get the licensure that I hold, they need a master's degree in substance abuse studies, which are hard to come by. Like, not a lot of schools have that much training and education that focused around addiction, addictive disorders, and substance abuse. So I was like right in that window where I could get grandfathered in. And that was really my motivation to do it, was, to do this before the window closed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in the process of doing that, so when we're learning to do assessments on other people, you have to take them yourself. And you go through that process.
Snap. Oh.
A little eye-opening.
So I openly identified as a person in recovery. And it was a very intimate class when I was learning how to do, it's called the Substance Abuse Subtle Screening Inventory, or Index, something. It's called the SASI. But the thing that's really interesting about the SASI is it can score your substance use, but it also picks up and detects mental health conditions like depression, trauma, self-harm, all of these things, right? So my results were just fabulous. That the professor talks about them openly in class, and they were like, "Oh, Sarah's score is great. It's a great example. It had all these things for when you're screening for substance use that they're trying to teach us to check for people that have all these other things than substance use." And so after the class, when I get outed for having depression, anxiety, PTSD, history of self-harm from this screening, I went to his office and I was like, "Hi, can we talk about my test results?" And, he did apologize. He was great about it. He just said, he had just assumed, he knew I'd been to therapy. He knew I had done what he thought was all of this work, that someone had told me this before. But they had not. So that's really how I found out that all of this stuff was related to self-harm, coping with depression and anxiety. And so that was news. So I became co-occurring at this point.
I mean,
can you, for the folks at home who may not know, what does co-occurring mean?
Oh, thanks, Nat. See, I told you, I have to the therapist happen off and on. So co-occurring is just when you have more than one disorder that occur at the same time. So they say co-occurring. They used to say dual diagnosis, meaning that you just had more than one diagnosis. Most people have a dual diagnosis. Most people are co-occurring. Like, if you have a mental health, substance use, behavioral health disorder, they usually occur in pairs. Anxiety and depression are extremely common to go together. Same girl, same. But yeah, it's very, very common for people to have those two diagnoses both. And it's it's the same thing with, autoimmune disorders or a lot of other health conditions, is that it's very, very typical for you to have more than one. I don't know why in behavioral health, we just tried to spend a lot of time being like, oh, it's this one thing. Here it is. That's all. Fix this one problem. You're cured. But yeah, we're learning more every day that it doesn't work that way.
So Sarah, I would love to ask, what was the thing that convinced you to, or pushed you or motivated you to stop your substance abuse? Was it, was it Jason? Was it, like a growing relationship with him? Was it something that occurred in your own life? Like, was there a thing, or was it multiple things that just kind of got you to the place where it was like, I can't keep doing this anymore? What was that thing?
It was probably multiple things. One, because my self-worth at the time was like very external. So, and I told I mentioned, a lot of my motivators were about making other people proud of me, not really making myself happy. So my parents were not, bad. I mean, they weren't bad parents, but they were very, not even so much critical, but they were not necessarily praising. You had to do a lot to earn praise in my family. And so I always have said it's very difficult growing up in a family with exceptional people. So, like my dad was a professional athlete. My uncle's a professional athlete. I have cousins that are incredibly talented, like vocally, musically. I have like my brother that passed away. He got to choose between a full ride academic baseball or basketball scholarship, so it's not like, it's not like that you had to do a lot to be impressive. Like, it had to be big and it had to be kind of better than everyone. And that was almost the expectation. So like today, I can sit here and I can say, I know I'm very smart. When I was younger, I absolutely did not. I was not smart enough. I knew school was easier to me than it was for some people, but if I, and it wasn't even about the grade, it was really about the ability. So, that was how it should be, because the bar was always up here. So a big part of it, like when I was starting to struggle in school, and I knew that my parents would end up finding out, or if I wasn't able to graduate, things like that. Like, that was really what stopped me from using quote unquote, like hard drugs. Because I was like, at that point of time, like, I wasn't just, using marijuana and stuff like that. Like, I was smoking meth. Like, I was up 4 days at a time. I was taking acid. I was like, yeah, when I say anything and everything, and it was better when it was free, like it was whoever was around me and whatever they had, I would do. Yeah. I did like to be in control, and I think that had to do with because of my trauma. So I didn't really do like opiates or, like a lot of Xanax or anything like that, because I wanted to be alert. I wanted to be very vigilant. I did not trust people to be around them. So I trust people to use what they had to offer me for free, but I was not really going to let my guard down. So I was using primarily methamphetamines, because it kept me alert. So even if I was drinking, taking pills, smoking weed, it kept me from passing out. So it was sort of a protective thing as well. It's kind of weird to say it that way, but in my mind, it made perfect sense.
Yes. And that's the thing about addiction is it is logically illogical, right? Like it makes sense on a lot of levels, and then it makes sense on absolutely no levels. But I think so many people in our bariatric community feel that same way about food, right? We think that we think that we have it all together. We think that it's in check. We think that people don't know like how bad it is. But yet our loved ones know how bad it is. Our loved ones see us abusing food in a way that's harmful for us. And while we don't think of it as self-harm, others see it as self-harm, right? Because they can see.
And we're amazing at rationalizing it, not only to ourselves, but trying to rationalize to other people. So we make the illogical logical to ourselves. And that's really, at the end of the day, all you have to sell it on. You just have to sell yourself, because at the end of the day, you're going to be alone at some point. So you'll be able to get whatever you want to get and do whatever you want to do. And you'll only have to answer for it later, which we all know in the moment, all you give a shit about is scratching the itch right now. Like you can explain it away to anybody later. Right? So it's ask for forgiveness instead of permission. So you just go out and seek what it is you want, and then you can explain it away later if you can. If you can't, you'll deal with the consequences then, because at least the itch has been scratched. So that's all, at the end of the day, that's what you have to worry about.
Well, Sarah, I also want to ask, when did that addiction transfer to food? When was that moment, or did you have a moment, or was it like, how did that happen?
So, and I don't really like to say, because there are people, so even me, like now, like I don't identify as an addict anymore. And it's mainly just because there are people that are bonded and attached to that substance, and they have a relationship with that substance. So that relationship with food, the relationship with alcohol, the relationship with their drug of choice, like it is on a very different, deeper level than what was going on with me. And so I don't identify that way. Like I identify as a person in long-term recovery, because this has been a journey. It has been a journey of recovery. It has been a journey of learning how to love myself, and how to deal with life on life's terms instead of trying to get them away. So for me, my issues with weight started probably with a few years after I got sober, or after I'd stopped using drugs. I wasn't ever really sober because I did drink on occasion. I still do. And that's me. I'm not, I don't tell other people that they can do that because I do that. That's just because I know I don't have that same addiction to a substance like someone else does. I've been able to drink in a healthy, responsible way, outside of that. But, so Jason and I ended up getting married, about a year after that. And then we had Jordan the year after that. And when I had Jordan, I had gotten married 4 days after I turned 18, and I have a daughter, already. So she was 5 when Jason and I got married or got together. So when we had Jordan, Shay was 7, we have a baby, we were done. So I got my tubes tied. And so I didn't have to go back on birth control because I'd had a tubal ligation. And so at that point I started having, problems with my period, cramping, a lot of abdominal pain, all of those things. Going to the doctor, they're trying to figure it out. And so I get diagnosed with Pcos, which is an autoimmune disorder. Did not find out it was an autoimmune disorder till right before I had bariatric surgery. But I'd gotten diagnosed with Pcos, and being on birth control all of the years, had kept it under control. So I didn't have symptoms. I didn't know. And so literally when I went off the pill, when we decided to have Jordan and I went off the pill, I got pregnant with Jordan within like 2 months of stopping birth control. And after they found out I had PCOS, I panicked actually at the time, because we were supposed to wait 3 months, and I missed that part of the doctor talk. So I was freaking out, like, oh my gosh, there's going to be something wrong with my child. But I actually found out that was sort of a God thing, because they said if I had gone out of that 3-month window, that birth control was what was regulating my hormones, and that's what allowed me to get pregnant in that window. And we probably never would have had Jordan if I'd followed the rules. But so, at the time I started having all these issues, lots of hormone issues. My body was overproducing testosterone, which, causes insulin resistance. And so I started gaining weight, and I was also having like horrible periods. So when I was 28, they were going to do an ablation, which they go in and they basically burn your uterus. Or they thought they could do a total hysterectomy. And they thought removing my ovaries and stopping the overproduction of the estrogen would fix the PCOS. And then they could regulate my estrogen production through, a replacement. So I agreed to that. But then, now, years later, they found out that doesn't fix it. And so they actually overdosed me on estrogen, because I was taking the estrogen replacement. However, my brain did not comprehend that I'd had a hysterectomy. So somehow my body was still making estrogen. And so I was, like having a lot of problems. So if you don't know, that causes a lot of pain. And then the other thing that I've learned is autoimmune disorders come in pairs. So, I have PCOS, I have chronic pain, I had chronic inflammation. And I really just, from that point on, I gained about 10 pounds a year. So my son is 19. And so from my mid 20s until my mid 40s, I gained 200 pounds. And it was just progressive over time, despite diet, despite exercise. Like with really restrictive diet and exercise, I was able to keep from gaining more weight, but I was never able to lose the weight. And so there were periods like I worked out in the gym with a trainer 5 days a week. I was super toned. I still weighed 260 pounds. It was very solid. But, I was still I just kept getting bigger. And I think probably what happened was not that I really started using food to cope ever with any of that. It was like, and there were times that I did, it wasn't my go-to. I didn't understand that what I was doing. I thought I was using, like, it was sort of a thing that I was rewarding myself, and I was not using a substance. But I think I got tired of being miserable to still be big. So what happened was it was like a shift in my mindset. Like, if I'm going to be big, I'm going to live my life and be big. So instead of being on that super calorie restrictive diet, like, and then going to the doctor and having them accusing you of lying because you're not using weight, well, you must be eating something else. Well, what did you not put in here? What is not, because, this is before my fitness pal. So I had the paper food diary journal. Well, what did you not put down? I put everything down. Like that candy bar, it's on there. Like everything's on there. And they're like, well, no, because if you were really this calorie deficient, you would be losing weight. Obviously not.
So you kind of had that moment of like when a kid gets told that they're bad, so they might as well just be bad.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even really, so I've made this joke. I know you guys have heard it, but I guess everybody hasn't, so I'll talk about it. So I joke that like going through my bariatric journey, I learned that I was on sumo wrestler diet. And so for those of you that don't know, sumo wrestlers consume like 10 to 12,000 calories between like 8 p.m. and bedtime or 6 p.m. and bedtime. I don't know. I'd have to look it up specifically. But basically, in a very short window, they eat a huge amount of calories and they go to bed. They train all day long. But that's how they get that size, is they consume all of these calories and then go to bed. And basically that's what I did. I sort of became, you know, a workaholic. I guess I'll call it. Like, I work all the time. I take on all of these projects. The project used to be
the fact that you said, I guess I'll call it, yeah, that's my ass. She threw herself headlong into work to a point where it was not uncommon for her to go to work leave for work at 7:45 in the morning, and we wouldn't see her till 11 o'clock at night, 11:30, sometimes midnight. There were times, I mean, we knew ahead of time coming up because it would be before like an audit, a divisional audit that they had in their office for files. But there was times she spent over 24 hours in her office. They wouldn't leave. Like, they would order food in, they would just sit there all night, go through files and make sure all the charts and stuff were as they needed to be for the audit to be successful. But that's the amount of like work for her. Like, there was no taking a day off. There was no, like, the stuff she does now so that we can do the events that we do now, that's absolutely a no-go, because there was nothing that came between her and work, family included. Like, it really wouldn't matter. It would take something to where one of us would have to be hospitalized for her to take a day or even partial day off. Like, she just wouldn't do it. It just wasn't a thing. So to her, she equated being good enough or being worthy to how much her job needed her, making herself indispensable to her profession and to her bosses, to a point where she would never let anyone down. And that came at the detriment of how they treated her. So she and I would often get into arguments because I would tell her all the time, I'm like, these people treat you like a doormat, yet you treat them like they're the highest office in the land, and you bow to them and do all the things you could do for them to prove your worth. And those are people that will never see the worth that you're trying to purvey. Like, they're just not going to see it, because that's not what they do. They will take from you all that they can, because that's their job. They're designed to suck everything out of you that they can, because it helps benefit them and their progress. Like, that's what they need to be able to be proficient in their, you know, in their career. But they're not ever going to shower you with the praise that you're after. It's just not going to happen.
Well, no, it's because it goes right back to this whole theme of self-love.
Yeah.
Right? You don't love yourself, so you're looking for that love and validation from any place that's outside of yourself. And when you know that you're good at something, I'm going to go there, right? I know that I'm good at my job, or I know that I'm good at eating, or like what you said, Sarah, chasing that dragon when it comes to a meal, right? I'm chasing that zone out. I'm chasing that feeling of being full or fulfilled or satisfied. You just keep doing it because you don't feel it within yourself. So you're looking for it from all of these outside places. But all that does is get us to total and complete burnout.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But, and it was a double-edged sword, though, too, also for like me and the family, because she knew that, like, we had gotten to a point where she knew that I wasn't going anywhere. I was trustworthy. We were solid. Things were good. I could be, you know, because for the first probably six, we were dating 6 months, maybe 7 months before I even got to meet my daughter. Like, I didn't get to, like, there was none of that. There was no cohabitate. I didn't go around. I didn't spend the night. Like, I could come there after she was already asleep, and I had to be gone before she was going to wake up, because there was none of that. Like, and there was very limited contact of even being at the house while she was there. And I understand that fully, 100%, because she didn't want, if we weren't going to work out, she didn't want me to be around and get her all excited and whatever. But it was after the fact of, like, she knew we were on solid ground. Things were great. Like, we had been married, we had our son, like, all that stuff was cool. And she knew that she was good to leave that at like nothing was going to fall apart while she was gone. So she could separate that between the two. She knew that all that stuff was good and it was going to thrive on its own because her mom, you know, was in the picture every single day. She would come and help if I needed help with anything or if I needed to go do anything. She knew her mom would come at the drop of a hat to come spend time with the kids while I went and did something. So she knew that that ball was wrapped solid and couldn't be penetrated. It was cool over here and she could just stack that over here. That led her to be able to just go, you know, chase the brass ring and never have to worry about what was going on at home. But in reality, what she didn't, you know, what she didn't realize was happening is we as a family were like having to realize how to learn how to live without her being in the picture, because she just wasn't. Like, she would come, the kids would be, you know, 5 hours in bed by the time she would drag her ass home. And I would have, you know, will have been having made through my work day the whole night with the kids, everything, dinner, bath time, you know, story time, getting homework done, get them in bed. And by the time she got home, I was either passed out or I had other stuff to do. So her mom would come hang out with the kids and I would go do what I had to do after all that stuff was completed. But it was just like, we had, you know, she was making a living, but we weren't making a life, because it was so separate of everything. Like, yeah, the checks hit the account, like, you know, on the regular, and that's cool to have all the bills paid and all that stuff done. But that's not like, I didn't marry a bank account. Like, I married her so that we could be together and build a life. And it was just so separate of a situation that it really, and the more I tried to explain it to her, she just was like, yep, that's cool. Like, work, I got to do this. I got to do charts. I got to do notes. I got to do this. And I got to be better. And I got to fucking do it. Like, you're good. You know, I love you. We're not going anywhere. Like, I'm going to do this. And it took a lot of reframing my mind of what marriage looked like, because that as a whole, like, you think about it and it's like, well, we've kind of redefined all the terms of marriage as a whole to begin with, because my daughter's not my stepdaughter. She's my daughter. Like, there's nothing you can tell me, like, you know, she's mine. Like, I don't give a shit. You know, and we don't do gender, you know, the gender normal roles. Like, I do dishes, I do laundry, I do all, you know, I'm doing laundry right now. But it's just kind of the thing. Like, we have never done the, you know, Ozzy and Harriet, like what, and I just dated the hell out of myself, by the way. But yeah, we've just never done like the just the normal TV version of, like, we just have never done it that way. So it took a lot for me to kind of put my ego and pride aside of being like the man of the house, whatever, and have to realize that, you know, she's like, there's no give right now. Doesn't have to mean that there won't be give later. There's not, this conversation is always on the table. Like, I don't have to dig my heels in right now, because I know eventually she's working through what she has to work through for her right now. And she, you know, in my thought process, we were good. Like, I had the house, I had the kids, I had the stuff. Like, she did not have to worry about any of that not leveling out, because I wasn't going to let any of that fall. She worked her ass off to make sure that, you know, she was good on that side. And there, you know, I wasn't going to let it fall on the other side. So it was tough, but at the same time, it was, I mean, it was worth it in the end, because now she's kind of coming around to seeing all the things that are kind of coming to that weren't serving herself the best way.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of my big wonder, or my big question is, so how did you go from this extreme to where you are now? Right. And I, you know, I know that you're not going to say like, oh, I'm 100% self-love and everything's great, because that's not the case at all. Right. This is a spectrum. But, you know, how did you go from this one very extreme side of things to this place where you could acknowledge your past or accept your past, and then get to this place where you are experiencing or you are practicing more self-love in your everyday life?
I think a lot of it had to do with realizing how much, like, and I'm going to give them a lot of the credit to the pre-work that I did for bariatric surgery. So, because going through that process has really helped me realize that this was just another way that all of this, like my self-harm has been transformed again. And so gosh, I know like when it got really bad, because I had a lot of chronic pain like through all of this, and then adding on the weight, it didn't help. So, you know, when I was mentioning earlier, like that people that know me or have known me for a long time, like they know right now that I am fabulous compared to where I was. I'm kind of like, meh, to anybody else that sees me. But because I was like, literally, I was limping. Like I walked like I was 80 years old. It was a struggle to get up off the couch. Like everything hurt all the time. And so I went to the doctor probably in 2018 and just said, you know, like basically like all these meds are not working. I was on like 9 prescriptions. I was on this stuff, you know, for digestion. I was on anti-inflammatories, muscle relaxers, antidepressants that also help with pain receptors, and was on all this stuff. And she said, you know, like basically there wasn't really anything else that she could give me, but she could write me a prescription for opiates, like for pain pills. And I was just like, and that was sort of like no, like I've done all this to not do that. And so like with all of the stuff that because I work at a community mental health center, so I see the people come in that got in the accident and started the opioid prescription, and you know now their opioids got cut off, and the next thing you know they're buying heroin off. So like I'm not, no, was just the thing. And so she did a referral for bariatric surgery because that was kind of, and really I'm sort of an experiment. I mean, they know, you know, bariatric surgery works for weight loss. But I have the sleeve over like a gastric bypass, specifically because most of the hormones that I have issues with are originate from your gut. They're gut hormones that cause a lot of my problems. And so it was literally like, we're going to cut out 80% of your stomach. It's going to help you lose weight. And we're going to hope it resets like your whole metabolic system. Which I'm very, very lucky and fortunate that it appears that it has. I do still have like some flare-ups. So there's days that I get up and I'm in a lot of pain and it's hard for me to stand up straight. But I would say, you know, 9 out of 10 days, I'm great.
Yeah.
So I know like a lot of it was the process of going through the bariatric, like the whole process of like understanding this is what your new life is going to be. These are all the things that you have to do, and you have to do them. And so I was really honest, like I follow these recommendations, but usually I'm good for about 90 days. And then when I see no results, I get a case of like the F-its, you know, and I'm like, nope, done with this, didn't work, on to the next thing. And so like they were really on it, like, you know, like you can't do that, like, because you're losing part of your anatomy. So this protein, you're going to have to do it forever. These vitamins, you're going to have to do it forever, or you're going to get really sick. And it could become life-threatening if you do not do these things. So it was very different in that respect. Like, I have to make this a priority. I have to make me a priority. It was a lot of fights between Jason and I, because I was like so vocal about it. Like, I have to do this, and it has to be about me. Because one thing about my other little, you know, weird, like little thing that I say is I'll say denial is a beautiful thing. And I'm not just talking about the river in Africa, you know, I told you, I think I'm funny. Y'all don't have to laugh at my jokes. I'll laugh at them myself. but so, because Jason's always been heavier than me, like for as long as I can remember. And so it's always been about his weight because, and I think it really had to do with the amount of food that he eats, the way that he eats is very, like if you see him basically like binge, which I don't know that he calls it a binge, but to an outside person looking in, he's binging. And so since he ate that way and I did not eat that way, it was more about me worried about him, focus on him, trying to control his eating, trying to control his food, trying to get him to exercise. And so basically like they were telling me like, you can't do that anymore. So I would come back and I was basically like like yelling at him, like, you're going to have to start doing these things for yourself. I cannot do them for you anymore. And it was kind of this back and forth. He's like, so don't.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, it's all of it. It's that innate thing that a lot of us have in there of like, well, I need to take care of other people, right? Because if I'm not taking, right, that's the way that I can avoid taking care of myself is when I take care of other people, then I don't have to do the work of myself and I can just, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that sense of control too, right? That you had growing up and all of that. I mean, I think all of us in the bariatric community struggle with that sense of control and not having that sense of control. And that was your moment to be like, but I don't have control over Jason. What do you mean I don't have what? And they took that away from you and you had to put that control on yourself.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I had to make myself the important one because I am, and it's not, you know, it's kind of like when we were at Renew 2022 and my brother was just so amazed about how relaxed I was going into that. And it's because he knows I am such a control freak. I double and triple check everything. I have everything, you know, situated, organized, order. I know exactly what's going to happen. And if that's not what happens, I know what's going to happen next because I've already planned for it. So, you know, when I'm talking to him and I'm getting on a plane and I'm showing up at the Hilton and I'll figure it out when I get there, he was like, who is this person? And what have you done with my sister? But, you know, I think part one is Danielle was fabulous and that event was fabulously organized. So I could definitely relax and focus on other things. But I think also is I am kind of letting go of some of that need to control. And I have noticed lately, because I will tell, you know, like Jason and I will be talking about something and I'm like, well, you probably ought to XYZ. And he'll be like, yeah, you know, I probably do need to do that. And then I just kind of leave it alone. I don't come back every 5 minutes. Did you do the thing? What about the thing? Did you do the thing today? What about, you know, and so I'm not that constant, you know, prompting, reminding, monitoring. Like I can't do that and worry about myself. So I think all of that is kind of relaxing a little bit in my life.
Yeah, I was going to say like, yeah, well, you know, I was going to say it's kind of like you can't do both. And you've reached the point where you realize that if my self-care and my self-love does not come equal to my family members, I'm not going to be present. I can't be the person that I want to be, right? Like you just realize that weight or, you know, all of these things that were keeping you stuck before surgery, they're still present after surgery. Right. Yeah. So it's all of a sudden you start to lose that weight and you look around and you go, oh my God, it wasn't actually the weight. And the only thing left to do is to do the things differently than what you did before. And self-love, self-care are probably two things that we have never truly done before because we've been deflecting or we've been saying that other people need us when in fact that probably was not the case. We needed ourselves and we just didn't acknowledge that.
Well,
absolutely.
She's doing so much better on so many fronts though too, because in Whereas every job she's ever had, she takes on as many roles as she possibly can, does all the things for all the people everywhere, to the point that it's detrimental to her own job getting done. And she's actually had, times in the past where that's come back to bite her, because she wasn't able to get her own stuff done. And she had to have tough conversations like, well, what's yours? And she's like, well, I'm trying to be everything to everybody. And they're like, yeah, but you're not being anything to yourself. So you didn't get your work done. So that's a problem. But now, even earlier in the year, around, right before her surgery, she went and she was on like 3 boards here. She was doing 3 different boards, doing all these things. And, earlier, I think earlier in the month, she was like, hey, guess what? Like, I'm going to have to let some of this stuff go. Like, I can't do it all. Like, it's too much. It's requiring too much time. I'm not getting anything out of it. Like, it's not serving me in the way it's supposed to. So she's made tremendous strides in the point that she's recognizing things aren't serving her the way they're supposed to, and she's letting them go. Like, that's nothing she would have ever done before. She's not only more involved in home now, she's actually leaving work early or taking time off or doing things, like everything about the way she's approaching life now on the backside of surgery, and even a little bit before surgery, it is just a stark night and day difference between everything. She's serving herself a lot more now, which also in turn spending more quality time, not only with us at home, with her friends, with family. Like, it's just it's a totally different situation. And I attribute a lot of that to, helping her be so successful, and the fact that she's, able to be less stressed, so she is in less pain. Like, it's a different mindset, physical set, mental set, like everything about it is different now.
And that's kind of the last question that I want to ask or to have us talk about, because I think sometimes when we talk about self-love, it's really hard to define for other people. Right? Like, what is self-love? Sometimes I think we think it's like the tangible things that we buy for ourselves, or it's a bubble bath, or it's this, or it's that. But self-love is actually much more deeply connected to who we are as individuals, and those values or those things that are motivating us. And self-love can be taking the time to recognize what is motivating me to do these things, and is that actually serving me? And having those, like, people don't understand that. Like, we're always trying to explain this. The work of weight loss surgery is this. It's these types of conversations that we have with ourselves and with the people that we care about. It's not like physical labor. It's up here.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess the question that I pose to all of us is, what has been the biggest way that we have shown ourselves self-love after our bariatric surgery? What has been that one thing that we've really recognized in ourselves where we were lacking that love? And what have we done since surgery to change that, to show ourselves love? Does anybody have like that, something that they know they can share right away?
So for me, it's been focusing on what they call body liberation. So I know a lot of people talk about body positivity, body neutrality, right? So like, body positivity is loving your body at the size that you're in. And I tried that. It's not that I haven't tried that. I've tried that. It didn't work. Like, no, like there was just a block. And so then, there was this huge, I like jumped into the body neutrality movement. Like, I am more than my body. My body functions to protect me and take care of me and keeps me healthy. It's not about appearance, like, it's other things. But really all that led me to do was go get a whole bunch of letters, because I was like, I'm just going to go and I'm going to throw myself into education, because
I was going to say, you
it's not about my appearance.
And by letters, you mean you threw yourself back into school, right? You wanted to validate your self-worth through becoming more educated so that you can prove to the world. Okay. So when Sarah's talking about letters, she literally means getting more education so that she has more credentials after her. Okay. I just need to clarify that.
There are so many letters after my name, and it's kind of funny. Like, I joke that it's not false modesty. Like, when somebody ask me for all of my, like, they want my full credentials with my bio. Like, it's really embarrassing now, but it's embarrassing because of, I realize why I have them. I realize where they came from. You know, and so of course I make everything a joke, but I just said, like, once I accepted that I wasn't going to be the hot girl anymore, then I had to go out and be the smart girl. And so, but it's still, like you're saying, it's not about loving myself. It's about figuring out what that thing is that's going to validate me. And so, like, now I've had to get really honest about that. So I would say that is the biggest change that I've made, is like being honest with myself. So I used to say, like, oh, I'm a serial multitasker. Like Jason was talking about all my projects. And you know, the things, and if I'm volunteering for other charities, that's even better, because it's, you know, I'm doing all this stuff and helping all these people. But I had to get really honest that I'm not a serial multitasker. I'm a serial self-neglector. Like, that is what it is.
Oh,
Because she's not really good at multitasking, even though she calls herself a serial multitasker. That's why I was shaking my head no, because she'll talk about being one, but yeah, she neglects a lot of other, like, she gets laser focused on something and she'll kill whatever she's laser focused on. But the rest of it, it does not get the attention it needs nor deserves.
but
That's
really
the ADHD though.
But it's really interesting that your self-love, the way that you're showing yourself self-love, is through honest dialogue and conversations with yourself. And getting to the root of, why do I feel I need to do these things, or why am I feeling the need to do these when they're actually harming myself?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. And I think, and then the goal of that is about, like, body liberation. So body liberation is kind of like, I don't know, like, if you do body positivity and that levels up to body neutrality, then I guess, like, body liberation is the next level. But it's really about, like, inclusivity and autonomy and acceptance of people, like, of regardless of what the size is. Like, we're accepting yourself for who you are, for where you are, you know, accepting that diversity, that we're all always going to look different. So it's sort of anti the comparison that we all do and that we all struggle with. And it's about, like, really having self-worth for who you are as a person and all of those pieces. So I think the other thing where I've struggled in the past is having self-worth identified on this thing. Like, it's going to be this thing over here, and that's what gives me value, and that's what makes me worthy, instead of pieces of all these things and all these experiences is what, you know, is what makes me a good person. That's what makes me be able to give back to others. That's what drives me to be able to take care of myself and take care of other people and give back. And so it's really about that body liberation. Is about putting all of those pieces together. And so it's like looking at yourself becoming a whole person.
Which is very hard to do, because many of us have never thought of ourselves as a whole person, a whole complete person.
No.
That's valued.
Yeah. And so that's why I said this is going to be about my journey to self-love, because I'm not there.
And that's
100% work in progress. But I also, you know, like, that's why I post so much, and you'll see in my posts, I say all the time, celebrating the small wins, and it's progress, not perfection. Yeah. Because I think a lot of my problems have come from striving for perfection for so many years, and it's not going to happen. But as long as I'm progressing every day, as long as I get up every day and I'm better than I was yesterday, I'm okay with that. Or I'm at least trying to be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah, right. Imperfect progress done consistently leads to big results. Yeah.
Yeah,
what about?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask now.
Yeah, I mean, I think mine is similar to Sarah's. You know, I really realized when we were at Renew that I didn't ever value anyone's words or actions towards me, because I thought that they were just pity, or, you know, just, I didn't think that I was worth it. Right. And so now I've been really working on accepting words and actions for myself, like that are to me, and actually internalizing them. So with my journaling and things like that, I actually write down like a nice thing that someone said to me, or something like that, because I need to see it and feel it and reflect on it. Because before, you know, in the past, I would just kind of, okay, yeah, that's nice, thanks, bye. You know, I would just kind of like, okay, cool. And then it would just roll off of me, like it would not absorb at all. And so now, I think since my surgery, and I get better at this every day, but I really have to sit and like accept the words and the actions that are done for me or said to me. And that has really helped kind of shift my mindset towards myself as well. Like, oh, I deserve to feel happy and good and proud and all of these like positive things. I'm worth those feelings. I deserve to have those feelings. So that, I would say, is my biggest shift that I've had since surgery. And it's not easy. I mean, some days are obviously better than others. I struggle to accept a lot of things, and I struggle to say nice things to myself, but I catch myself sometimes where I'm like, no, you need to like actually accept that compliment. You need to actually accept that compliment and like know that it's true, because I'm also discrediting the people that give it to me.
That is such a powerful insight that I would have never thought about, right? Accepting a compliment and just taking it for face value is so hard, because my brain automatically goes to, well, they're only saying it because XYZ. They want something from me, or they're trying to be kind to me for this reason, instead of just accepting probably the true reality, which is they're giving me a compliment.
Yeah. And my brain would go to like what Sarah said, you know, my brain would go to like, well, if you would have known me before, like you would not be saying this. But it's like, no, actually people were saying that before surgery as well, and I was doing the same thing. So it really doesn't matter if I'm 400 pounds or, you know, where I am now. It's like, okay, no, you're kind, you're smart, you're loving, so like let people say those things. Or your hair looks really cool, let people say those things. So that's something that I've worked on since my surgery, and a lot more recently. Is just like, yeah, accepting compliments and nice things and actions at face value, because I deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm looking at the definition. That is having regard for your own well-being and happiness. Is just to stop, to let your guard down and stop distrusting people and just trust people. Wow. Jason, my friend, what about you?
Mine's kind of two-pronged. I thought for once me and Nat were going to be like, me and Nat usually our stuff kind of aligns like a lot. And I was like, well, I guess this time it won't. But then she brought it around to where, of course it does. But no, the first thing for me was I had to realize that post-op, that all the treating myself and the things that I used to say to myself to make myself eat the way that I would eat was not actually treating myself. I had to realize that if I didn't stop acting and eating and treating myself the way I treated myself before, that I was going to wind up the same after, and that I wasn't actually treating myself, I was killing myself. And that, you know, it was kind of a punch in the gut to me, because I thought I was always, you know, even in my, you know, my own twisted, you know, mindset, I was just like, oh man, this is good. Like we're doing this, and I'm doing this for you because you're hungry. Like I've got to feed my body. Like I got to keep moving. You know, all these things that I used to tell myself. but realizing that after the fact that that's not the case, nobody needs, 5 triple cheeseburgers to be able to move throughout the day. Like that's just not a thing, especially in one sitting. And so there was a lot of that stuff that I look back on now that's just ridiculous to me that I try to make myself believe now that I actually talked myself into before. And the other one actually came from a lot of the posts and stuff that I got yesterday, the shares and the stories and stuff that people were putting and the things they were saying about me on my stories for my birthday. It's a lot of the stuff that was said before. I was always the funny guy, the teddy bear, the cuddler, the hugger, the this, the that, I was always the guy that looked out for everybody. Like, because what Sarah was saying, that all her friends would always call me, and we called it Project Safe Ride, because if they were out at a bar somewhere and couldn't get home, I was the phone call. So I would spend half of my night, even though I had to get up the next morning, I would be up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, going and finding friends wherever they were and driving them home and getting them to their car, all the things that I had to do, because that's just how I was. Like, that was just one of the things that how I grew up, even though I was never the one drinking, I was always the one that was in charge of everyone's safety. I took, being a DD as my like ultimate goal. Like, it wasn't just to drive the drunk people. It was to make sure that if you were a female, that nobody was messing with you. Nothing got in your drink. Nobody was trying to do shady shit. If you were walking to your car, I'd make sure you got there. Like, that was I took that to that was a serious job for me, and always has been. So, I look at that type of thing. So when I hear people saying it now, it connects on a different level, because before I was like, well, yeah, I'm the funny, my thing was to be the funny fat guy. I was the comic relief guy. I was, if I was making jokes about me, you couldn't make jokes about me because I've already said it. My material was, was fast at that point, because I could always, bring it back to myself and make, it was always a thing. But now, I've always told people that now that I've lost the weight, I have to find new material, but I'm still finding ways to make, to do the things that I did before, and realize that people still say the same things about me, even though I've changed so much and I've done things to start serving myself more. And, it just was one of those things that connected with me on a level that I don't know that I was quite prepared for it to hit me the same way, because those are things that I've heard kind of in passing or little tidbits here and there, but it wasn't a collective until yesterday. Was kind of my first, post-op collective experience of everybody kind of saying a lot of the same things in line with things that people had said before. And I hadn't really seen it until yesterday. It was in writing for me to kind of look at and connect with, and it was just different. And it was really kind of a full circle moment for me to realize that, I can still be as good as I wanted to be post-op without fear of people not, kind of those fears being realized, that people really do care about me for me, not just what I can do to them, do for them, be to them. Those types of things aren't, it wasn't what I thought it was.
It's really interesting that all 4 of us really, our journey to self-love is rooted in acknowledging truth. Mm-hmm. Right? It's really rooted in just believing in who we always knew we were as a person, and getting in touch with our motivation to do those things, and realizing that when that motivation is harming us, we need to do it differently. But if our motivation for doing it is because that's who we are at our core, to know and to trust that people are going to love and appreciate us for our core is part of that self-love journey. And it's so hard. It's so hard because we haven't done it our entire lives, and we just haven't been able to trust it. And I feel like that word trust comes up in our conversations all the time. This bariatric journey is learning about, when do I trust myself? And when do I know myself well enough to know that I can't trust that, right? Like, you're really trying to figure out, again, what's truthful and what's not.
Yeah, that's good, April. And because I feel like it's not like, it's not even us trusting what other people say. It's like you said, like it's us trusting ourselves. And I know, like for me, because, you know, I have not always been big in other people's standards. I've always been big to myself. So like Jason and I both, you know, like throughout the course of our marriage, we've gained 200 pounds. Now we're on the way back down. But what I've noticed is, like, even though I've lost over 100 pounds, when I see myself, I still say the same negative stuff. Well, that's good, but you're doing good, but all these things are wrong. You know, all this stuff is still wrong with you. And I realized that's the same stuff I did at 168 pounds. Jason, when we got together, he had a 32 waist. He weighed 235 pounds. Like, he was this little, like, tall, skinny guy, you know, with broad shoulders. And I thought he was gorgeous. And he still would pick his outfits apart. He thought he was fat. He's like, I can't wear that. I'm going to look, you know, huge or whatever, you know, when we were going to do stuff. And it's the same things he says when he's getting ready today. And it's the same stuff he said when he was getting ready 191 pounds ago. Like, you know, like, so it's that, like, exactly what you said. Like, when do we trust ourselves, like what we're saying to ourselves?
Just drives the point home. If we, when we get to the point after a bariatric surgery where we realize, oh my God, nothing has changed. That is the light bulb. That is the lightning strike to tell you that is exactly what you have to change.
Yeah.
It's that thinking, it's that mindset, it's that self-talk, it's that missing self-love piece. That's what we have to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the work of weight loss surgery.
It is. And I will say, for me, I feel like it's getting better, because Natalie mentioned, you know, getting compliments at Renew. And I don't know that this is the first compliment I just wholeheartedly took in, but it was the first one that I just really noticed and I felt. So a woman came up to me at Renew and just told me that I was a light to her. And you know, kind of explained what that meant to her. And I literally, like, felt this warmth when I was accepted, because it was, I let that in. And it was so huge, because I'm normally just like, Natalie says, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. You know, but it took me off guard. And so I don't know if I wasn't prepared for what happened, but it was like, it got in there. But it was just like, yeah, I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. I just literally felt like a warmth in, almost like in my soul, just like letting that compliment in. And it was amazing.
And it does, it fuels you, you know, and then you start believing it. And then it starts to feel more comfortable to give yourself those compliments. But yeah, I mean, you have to do the work. Like I said, I write it down in my journal so that I can actually fully hear it, see it, read it, all of the ways that I can just shove it into my brain and my soul, because otherwise I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to let it roll off and it's not going to absorb into me. And that is self-love, you know, that is taking the time. You got to take the time, you got to absorb. Yeah.
Fun fact, Natalie was actually my first compliment like that I took in.
Oh,
Really?
When you left that voice message in the what was the east to west in the messages, when you were talking about how what I said in the podcast, that was the first one that I actually realized that April and I were doing real things out here. So that was that's my fun fact for the day.
And you're continuing to do that. And same with April and Sarah, you know, and me, like, we're all doing it, you know, and we need to but you know, people listening right now, you do that for other people too. And it's important to take the time that when someone says, that you are XYZ, that you're a light, that you're helpful, that you're a friend, that's their reality. So it's real.
The worst thing I hear people say is, but I only have so many followers. It's not about your followers. I'll tell you flat. I don't care if you've got 5 or 500, 5,000, 500,000. It doesn't matter. If you're out there and you're speaking positivity into the world, somebody's going to catch it. They're going to pick it up. They're going to talk about it. And if you help one person, you're doing better than you were doing yesterday. I mean, you've helped somebody do something positive for themselves or hear something positive that made a connection to them. And that matters. The follower count is erroneous. Like, none of that matters. It really, at the end of the day, because we've all met people that have 1 million followers and they act like people that have 5. It just doesn't matter. Like, that doesn't matter. Genuine people are going to be genuine people regardless at the end of the day.
Again, it comes back to our self-love for ourselves, right? When we love ourselves, that is enough. And sometimes if we find that we're seeking something else because we don't feel like enough, that could be an indicator that, oh, I need to fill this up first before I can, right, fill anybody else's cup up, so to speak. But as you so eloquently said, Sarah, it is a journey. We are all on this journey together. We all have a recipe, or we all have things that we're trying. And if we don't have these safe places to have these conversations, we're not going to be able to share it and to help ourselves and to help others. So we just want to thank you, Sarah, for joining us tonight and being so open and raw and real and honest about a story that I would imagine has taken you a very long time to get comfortable with sharing. But we are so thankful that you are comfortable sharing it. And we're just so thankful that you are just who you are and that you're a part of the Berry Nation family and that the universe has brought us all together so that we can do the work as friends, because that's where it really matters. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And she's also added a new criteria to people's friends list when they're asking them for stuff is, will you crawl under a strip club bathroom door, unlock it, and let me out? Because I don't know if you've been in many strip clubs. The bathroom, A, isn't somewhere you want to be hanging out. B, you damn sure don't want to crawl on the floor to get under a bathroom stall. So that's how you know you got your real one, is if you ask your friend that and they're like, yep. But if they're like, I don't know, it sounds kind of scary, you can be like, oh, well then we need to, you're not for me. We're not real friends.
Yeah, you're not my people.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You know what? And it's so funny, like that person. So I've had like three meltdowns before. So one is like, was that time she did that. Also, again, at my bachelorette party, I locked myself in the bathroom at a bar and she crawled under the thing to get me out. And then, but like the one that I probably will just like love her for forever, was when Jason and I were getting married. I went to my final fitting and my dress didn't fit. Oh. Because they had taken it in and they'd taken it in too much. But, you know, in my mind, it's because now I'm so fat and I've now ruined my wedding. And so I locked myself in the room, like the changing room, and I wouldn't come out and I'm bawling. And so again, she crawls under the thing and was like, it's not you, it's the dress. They took the shoulders in too much. I'm going to get the girl, like it's fine. And they fixed it and it was gorgeous and it was perfect. But yeah, she is my heart. So
truthful statements tend to do magic. I believe that is the literal definition of ride or die. I'm pretty sure. I can Google it, but I'm just going to say it's official.
Is.
Sarah, if people want to follow you on your journey, where can they do so? Where can they connect with you?
So on Instagram, I am berry.grateful. And I recently just changed my Instagram handle. Thanks to April. So if you knew before, there's some older stuff I think that's out there. It says at SASM72724. That was my AOL email address.
Mm-hmm. Your new one is way better.
This is a lot more fitting.
Yeah.
But I'm still out there as that on other things like Twitter and stuff. And then professionally, I have a LinkedIn page. So That's
And you
just
can
my name.
also you can also find her at Berry Nation coming up soon. She's going to be teaching some amazing classes on like health goals and goal achievement. So if that is something you are interested in, you can head to our website, which is www.barrynation.com, and you can learn all about the membership community that we are growing over there. And it is rad. That's all I have to say, because it's professionals like Sarah that are offering professional help for all of us trying to make our way through the bariatric journey. So yeah. And Sarah, you are an amazing human. Just going to say that again. And we are so thankful that you were part of the Berry Nation family, because you are rad.
Thank you. I'm really excited about that class. And I know, like, so I did have to go get that certification. It was not to add letters. It was really just for some people that I supervise that are going to be facilitating it. I'm like, well, I want to be trained as well. So that way, if they have issues, I'll be able to provide better supervision. And then when I'm sitting through that class, because it's whole health action management, and it really just has people drill down and create like one health goal, and then coaches them through it for 8 weeks, like while they're making progress. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this would be so great for Berry Nation. I have to bring it there. But, you know, my favorite thing was we had to go through the program ourselves before you can go on to get certified to teach it. And so we tried, like, it wasn't just me, but so many people in that class were trying to pick like multiple health goals. Well, I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do that. And then they were just redirecting it back. Like, no, what is your most important thing? One, you get one thing. And then, so a lot of people were doing stuff on self-care, you know, which I thought was interesting as well. And they were like, so they asked, they were like, okay, when you have achieved this goal, how will I be able to see it? And they were like, what? Well, I'll just care for myself more. And they were like, no, what will I take a picture of? And I was just like, oh, like that was just so mind blowing to me, because it doesn't let you keep it like some abstract out there concept. It has to be like, what you have to know. What does this look like in my day to day? How do I know when I'm done?
Yeah.
And I was just like,
it's going to be so powerful. Oh my God. I can't wait. I cannot wait, because I need that in my life. I think we all need that in our lives. So it's going to be.
Yeah, you're gonna be my challenge. So I'll be like, April, one thing. It's one.
Yeah, you already know. As soon as you said that, my anxiety just went through the roof, and I was like, oh God. Yeah. But again, the work that we're avoiding is the work we need to do. So.
Absolutely.
Miss Nat, do you want to tell people about our favorite day of the week?
Yes, actually, today we're recording on our favorite day of the week. It is Sunday. Every Sunday is our shout out Sunday, and it's where we get to highlight a member of our Instagram community on our grid. So essentially, you guys go to the link in our bio, you fill out the shout out Sunday submission form. Just tell us about you and your journey and your highs, your lows. We just want to know all about you, whether you're pre-op, post-op, anything in between, thinking about surgery, anything. Fill out that form, upload a photo of yourself that you're proud of. It does not have to be a before or after picture. It has to be a photo that you are proud of and that you feel like you're the most you in that photo, and then I get to post it. I get to upload it. I take everything that you write and I just copy and paste it, edit it a little bit, and then it goes up on our grid every single Sunday. It's a way for us to give back to you guys, our wonderful Instagram community. And it is completely free. You don't have to be a part of the paid Berry Nation membership. All you have to do is fill out that Google form and your story goes up, and it's the best. We get to just learn about you guys and highlight you, and just create more of that wonderful community feeling that we love so much.
It truly is like, it's the best way to roll into a fresh week, is just celebrating people and all of the amazing things that they've done along their bariatric journey. It's amazing. So if you have not submitted a shout out Sunday form yet and you're listening to this podcast, now would be a really great time to head to that link in our bio and submit. Jason, my friend, you want to take us out?
Yes, I just want to thank Sarah again for joining us and just giving us her story because it is powerful, it is amazing, and she's amazing. So, and I get to hang out with her the rest of the night when we're done here. So, but yeah, no, thank you guys all for liking, sharing, subscribing, spreading the word, not only of the podcast, but of Berry Nation as a whole. All we're trying to do is, each one teach one, help the next one, all the things that we can do to help. So you guys helping us is helping us to help you. And it's just cyclical like that. And we love it. So continue to leave us all the ratings, all the reviews on your favorite podcast player, also on our YouTube channel as well. On the Anchor platform, you can leave us a voice message that we can incorporate into future episodes. And we love doing that because having you guys be part of the episodes is always amazing to us because you guys are like our family. And we appreciate hearing from our family always. And remember, at the end of the day, you've got this, we've got you, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.